Hi everybody, this is Mark from We Talk Art. Last September 2024, I posted a video about the art challenge Inktober. Kind of talked about how to do it, what it is, what art materials you might do, strategies, all that kind of stuff. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you probably want to go and watch that video, and it will be right up here. In the comments, there'll be a link back to this video, and you come here all up to speed. This video is a recap of my experience doing Inktober in 2024. It's my goal, my strategies, my successes, failures, and what art materials I used, with a little bit of demos. So it's kind of a art journal flip through with art talk and art materials demo, all wrapped up in one video. Should be good. Let's roll the intro and get into it. Okay, true confessions. This is actually the third time I have attempted to do Inktober. I did it in 2021 and 2023, and I didn't finish yet. It's harder than it seems. And actually, in 2024, the last one, it took me 3 months. I was traveling at the time, and I was going to all new places, meeting people, and it was probably a little unrealistic that I could actually pull it off and do a drawing every day. And it didn't happen, but I did finish. It just took me 3 months. So I told in the previous video that you kind of need to frame it in a way that works for you, and 3 months worked for me. So I got it done. I like to treat Inktober as an art challenge and to challenge myself with it, to try to do something new or something that pushes me or kind of takes me out of my comfort zone. This year, my goal was to kind of use fountain pens to do some traditional pen and ink kind of work. It's something that I've always admired. I always really loved the old illustrative masters such as Howard Pyle and Franklin Booth and Arthur Rackham. Their classic style is something I've always strived for with pen and ink. Another art material I've wanted to get better with is the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen. This is a really fun tool. It's a brush pen with a cartridge-based ink, and I like it. I do okay with it, but I'm not great at it, so I thought I'd throw that in the mix. I'm just going to try to use this more and get better at that. As far as subject matter, I still kind of suck at drawing people. Something I would like to do better. And so I didn't concentrate on that. I didn't make it that like every image I did had people in it, I don't think. But I didn't shy away from it either. So again, another challenge, draw more people. So that's kind of the way I frame this challenge. Last time I did Inktober, last 2 times I actually used tone papers. And so I kind of feel like I got the tone paper down. I hadn't had a lot of experience with it at that time, but having done 2 challenges, or not finished, but 2 challenges with it, I feel like I have a good handle on it now. With the traditional pen and ink work that I was attempting, I decided on white paper. Many years ago, I realized that most sketch papers and thin papers just were very unsatisfying for the kind of work that I like to do. I tend to use all kinds of art materials, so I'm always throwing ink or watercolor or gouache into them. And so I've decided that when I go out and buy an art journal or a sketchbook, the minimum it's going to have is just going to have a good mixed media paper in it. So I chose a journal that had a good mixed media paper, and that brought me to the Strathmore Art Journal's softbound art journal series, which I've used in the past. Strathmore puts their papers into series by quality, and so they have a 100 series for kids, a 200 series that they consider a student grade, a 300 is kind of their base, and then they have a 400 and 500 series that are kind of their pro grade papers. I talked to a Strathmore rep back in the day, and they had told me that they thought these journals were a really good bargain because the paper they put in it is between their 400 and 500 series papers. That's across the board with all this line of journal. And so I got the white mixed media 8.5 by 5.5 art journal by Strathmore. And I like the size of this journal. It's big enough for me to express myself, but it'll still fit into a bag, carry around easy, so forth. The paper, as I've said, is really, really good. I've never found anything to bleed through it. The surface it has enough tooth that you can use graphite on it, but it's not so toothy that you can't do pen and ink on it. So it's kind of a really great in the middle kind of thing. The binding of this book allows it to go flat. And about the only downside of this book is that it is, the cover has a really great feel. It feels like maybe something between leather and suede, although it's synthetic. And it's probably its downfall because it tends to wear. Me drawing 31 drawings in this kind of caused it to, it didn't fall apart. It's still integrity. It wears really badly on it, and so it becomes unattractive. Some things when they wear, they get character. This isn't that. The final great thing about this book is it had 32 pages. So it had 1 page for an index and 31 drawings. Inktober, perfect. So this is the journal I ended up using, really happy with it. As far as the prompts this year, Jake Parker got a fair amount of grief on the prompts. They all seemed to have a theme to them, or very similar, and a lot of people online were kind of getting a little uptight about that. I personally didn't mind it. It was fine. Matter of fact, I had this idea, as I talked about in the previous video, of maybe I could create a theme to my drawings or have a character that flowed through it, but being traveling when I started, I kind of gave up on that idea. You will see characters pop up and themes, they're kind of there, but it's not hardcore all the way through. If you can do that, I'll be in awe if you do that. Someday I may try to make that happen. As I said, when I started this, I was traveling. I was really ambitious, and I was really trying to do a drawing every day. And I took one of my bits of advice to be able to kind of achieve that, and was to kind of put myself on a time schedule. And you'll notice that my beginning drawings are definitely more loose and quick than later ones, because when I finally gave up on trying to do a drawing every day and I was going late, started getting behind, I fell back into my old crazy detail, elaborate drawings, and you'll see that at some point. It'll go from more fast, loose to more tight, high detail, which is something I do a lot of. I've been trying to loosen up, but this didn't happen in the latter part of this. Okay, so again, this is my journal that I was using, the Strathmore journal, and I generally like to use the first page as an index page, and I kind of feel like I blew it on the first page, but it was the only journal I had traveling, and I just went with it. Next time I'll use a ruler, probably, to line that all up. But anyway, I like to list all the prompts here. Now, a lot of these drawings that I'm going to do, I used a lot of the same tools on. So at the beginning, I'm going to start talking about each of these tools, but this will accelerate along, so don't feel like I'm going to be talking endlessly about every drawing. This is day number 1, and I used the Platinum Preppy, which is a pen that I used a lot of time. And one of the things I do with the prompts is I like to kind of try to find something that's just a little off the obvious, and try to introduce some humor or something off kilter in it. So you'll notice that maybe I have a slightly unusual sense of humor and things, but you'll see that I kind of do that throughout. So again, goal was kind of drawing traditional pen and ink with fountain pens. This is pretty loose. I was still trying to draw every day. So the pen that I use for this is the Platinum Preppy. Platinum is a Japanese company that makes fountain pens. They make some pretty high-end ones, but this is their lowest end pen that I'm aware of. It's about a $7 fountain pen. It is cartridge based, and it is a decent pen for drawing. I tend to like this pen a lot, and I found it to be kind of my go-to pen for this, and partly it was because I was traveling. I didn't have all my art supplies, and I didn't have all my pens, but I still kept coming back to this pen because it's a pretty decent pen, and they're really affordable. The only downside is of these pens that I could see is I've actually dropped a couple of them. It's not like I drop all my art supplies, but For some reason, I've dropped these a few times, and they are a little fragile. I broke this one, and I kind of taped it up, and it seems to be working okay, but they do break kind of easy. But at $7, you can't really complain. The other great thing about this pen is that they are cartridge-based, so you can put different kinds of ink in it. And Platinum, it is their proprietary cartridge, which I'm not a big fan of, but the beauty of this is they have one ink that really stands out, and that is their carbon black ink. So this carbon black ink is a waterproof fountain pen ink, which is kind of unusual. It's waterproof on most kinds of paper, which has a real advantage. You can actually buy it in a bottle too, and so you could use it with other fountain pens. A lot of other waterproof inks are not appropriate for your fountain pen, so be very careful with that. Another good one that I like a lot is the Noodler's Bulletproof Black. It is a beautiful deep matte black, and it's really great. It's fun to use with a brush or fountain pens, or their flexible nib fountain pens. It's a great addition too. Its waterproofness is only on certain papers though. I found that this definitely doesn't hold its waterproofness on 100% cotton watercolor paper. So you've been warned there. But these, because they make a cartridge of that Platinum Preppy, for the Platinum Preppy or all their pens actually, these become kind of a really go-to pen for me. You can combine them with watercolor and everything. So why fountain pens opposed to other things, which I've used a lot of different pens, and I have them all lined up here. That's why I keep pointing to them. So these pens come in different sizes, 3 different sizes. There's an 02 version, which is their extra fine. There's an 03 that I don't have here, which is their fine. And then their medium is 05. So there's a lot of line variation. The one thing that's kind of fun about fountain pens is a lot of them have either a flexible or a semi-flexible nib that allows you to get different line qualities depending on how hard you press on it. So for instance, this pen here, you'll get a fairly fine line. You can flip it over, so this is the normal way you would hold the pen, and if you flip it upside down, you'll get a different line quality. And so you can even get a thinner line there, but then you can go down and actually bear down on this pen pretty hard and get an even thicker line. So you can get a lot of different line qualities, and a lot of fountain pens, or at least ones that are good for drawing, have a little bit of that flex to them. The Lamy that I'm going to show you later also has a bit of flex. So they're really great fountain pens for this kind of application and drawing. I like them a lot. So another nice thing about these pens is that when they dry, which I might be a little early, but when they dry, they tend to be pretty waterproof. That must not have been completely dry, but when they're dry, they're pretty waterproof. They may go a little bit, but they are suitable for using with watercolor or some other wet mediums, combining them, and they generally won't run if you let them dry just a little bit longer than I did. So anyway, Platinum Preppy, I use these a lot during this challenge. So again, this is day 1 backpack. And so day 2 is Discover. And so this is Discover. Again, it was done with a platinum and with a carbon ink. And so this one here was also started with a Platinum Preppy for the fine line work. And then that's where I got into using these Pentel Pocket brush pens in this. And so I used a sepia and a gray and a black a little bit in this after I had done the finer line work. These pens, again, are a really fun pen to work with. The reason I chose this is something I've used them for quite a while. I like them a lot. What they are is they are a cartridge-based pen that has a brush tip, and unlike some brush tips, this is actually a nylon brush, where some brush tips are more of a felt tip style tip. And so this gives you a lot of interesting line qualities. It's a really fun mark making tool. It can do fine detail, although what what I noticed is this is fairly soft, so you don't get a lot of brush sense of it on the surface. I concentrate on it a lot with doing a lot of filling in an area, and so it allows me to get a lot of really nice blacks. And I'll use it that way a tremendous amount, although I do try to draw with it when I can, although there is definitely art, and that's the thing that I have not got a good control of yet. And so I'm kind of working with that a little bit. But it's a really fun, very black, contrasty pen that you can have a lot of fun with. And so I've used it a lot during this challenge. It comes in 4 colors. There's the black, the gray, and the gray is I bought the gray and I use it sometimes. Different papers, it has a different amount of gray. I find it a little dark. I wish it was just slightly lighter. If you go over it, it'll definitely get darker. Again, it kind of depends on the paper, but as a general rule, I find it just a little bit dark. Another fun thing about these pens is that they make a really nice dry brush stroke look when you go fast, but that also really shows another kind of issue, is that the flow is controlled, and I realize they have to balance it. If it's too juicy, that's not good. And I think they do have a good balance, but there is times where I'm doing a lot of drawing or filling in a lot of area, and I'll kind of end up exceeding its capacity to supply ink, and it kind of feel dry. If you just take a second and go back, it's back to its juicy self. So gray is another one. This drawing here also had this sepia, which can also be fairly dark, but it's a pretty color. And then a brand new pen in this line, I think it just came out a year or two ago, is Sanguine. And so 4 colors. I definitely use the black a lot, and the other one's a little less, but they're real fun, and you'll see me using them throughout this art journal for Inktober. So back to my discussion about this being an art challenge. I wasn't really happy with this drawing. I felt like I kind of failed, but it's part of the art challenge thing, is you kind of try something that you may fail at, and that's part of how we learn. So this wasn't my favorite drawing, but I didn't rip it out. Of course, I only have 32 pages, so I couldn't. This is day 4, exotic, and again, I've tried to do some themes that went through. So this is travel to exotic destinations, and that picture, really small, has that island that was in the second picture in it. That island. So just kind of had some fun going through. This is again a platinum preppy for the line work, and then I came in here with a brush pen to add some depth. And that's one thing I like about the brush pen, is you can apply it into a drawing and get a lot of contrast, where I think I failed in some of the future drawings I'll show you, is just not getting enough contrast where I just used the pen and ink. Something I'm still working on. Another one of my not as favorite images, drawings that I did, but we're going with it. I think I was still working kind of fast, trying to be loose, and I'm still traveling. This drawing is number 5, and binoculars is the theme. And fountain, I used the Preppy fountain pen, and I used the Pentel pocket brush pens. Those are supposed to be ivory-billed woodpeckers, which are something that's, in theory, extinct. And I just thought I would have fun with this guy out. There's still people that believe they exist, and they're out looking for them. Or maybe they don't now, but there was a time where they were sometimes spotted, and so people would go out trying to find them. So it's just kind of my little thing on that. Binoculars. And this one I forgot to document what I used, but I'm pretty sure it's a Preppy fountain pen with the Pentel pocket brush pen yet again, which is, it's a combination that I like a lot. And this is kind of taken from a photograph that I had of Death Valley in the Mesquite Dunes area. And again, that guy is my backpacker from the first guy. So kind of a theme. So there's a little bit of fan art. Again, I do suck at people. This was supposedly the Fifth Element, made an attempt at that. And the prompt, day 7, is passport. And I just had some fun with it. In the movie, The Fifth Element, she had her multi-pass. And I put a U.S. passport in that spot. And so this one is, again, the Platinum Preppy with the carbon ink. And then I used a combination of the Pentel brush pens with the black and the sepia. This one I kind of liked. I felt like it came out pretty good. This is day number 8, and it's hike. And I was using a Lamy All-Star. So Lamy is a German company that makes fountain pens, and they have kind of a variety of them that are available. I use this pen, which is an extra fine for this, but they come in extra fine, fine, and medium. So the German pens are a size larger in their nibs than the Japanese pens as a general rule. So you'll find that the extra fine in a Lamy is a little bit larger than the extra fine in a Platinum, which is kind of an interesting thing. Although I find that between these two, the Lamy's a more expensive pen. The All-Star, the AL and All-Star means aluminum, and it's an aluminum-bodied pen. And although they do make plastic ones, this is a Safari Vista, which is their clear version, but they make these in all different colors, and they're a little bit cheaper. So these are a little under $50, and I believe these are around $30 in the plastic format. All the guts are the same pen, it's just different thing. Some people like the metal, although this one hasn't worn terribly well, but it's gained character. So anyway, if I'm looking at these, so this is an extra fine in the Lamy. And you can see I can do my trick of tipping it over. And then the Lamys are even a little bit more flexible. You can really bear down on them and get a lot of line variation of that. So when you compare that to the extra fine in the Lamy, you can see that the German pens, the Lamys, definitely have a larger tip, even though they're both extra fines. So something to be aware of. The other thing to be aware of is something that I was talking about earlier, but the Platinum Carbon ink is waterproof, and the Lamy is way not waterproof. I talk a little bit more about that. There's a drawing that I do. I'll show you a little bit more. But if I hit the Lamy with water, it goes crazy, which is a bad thing if you don't want it to happen, but you can have a lot of fun with that too if you really plan for it. But if you kind of go, you'll see that the Platinum ink doesn't want to run, although it does take a little bit longer to dry than I've been giving it. So Lamys are pretty cool pens. This again was done with the Lamy, and I was pretty happy with the contrast that I got out of it. And this is my hiker guy again. I did use the pocket brush pen to do a little bit of dark in the shoes, give a contrast there. Had fun with that one. But you can see I kind of talked about how I started getting a little bit more detailed as I gave up on trying to do a drawing every day. So this is one where I broke my rules. I ended up, instead of using a fountain pen or a pocket brush pen, I kind of went for it with this one. So this one is a combination of inks from a couple different companies. One of them is a slightly shimmering ink by Colorverse. They make a ton of inks, but they're generally not waterproof fountain pen inks. And I just chose to use a brush and brush it out with that. And then I also used FW inks, which is an acrylic-based ink by a company, De La Rowney, which makes a lot of different great art supply products. It's a fairly opaque ink with a lot of vivid colors, and so I decided to use that for the sun. And then the final thing that I used with this is the Tombow Fude nib pens. It's Japanese for brush, and you can see there's a brush on the pen here. These pens you can buy them individually or in a 2-set, and basically it has to do with how soft or hard the nib is. And so you can see that the only place you can really find what colors they are is the BH for hard and BS for soft. Otherwise, it's very hard to kind of tell the difference between these pens other than color. And I always forget which color is which, but the blue or the black one is more the hard one. And again, these are the beauty of these pens is that they have a flexible nib, so you can get very expressive lines with them. So this one here is the soft, or excuse me, the hard pen. And you can see that I can go here and I can make really nice fine lines with it, but then you can really bear down on it and get a really nice thick line. And so if you practice with these and get good, you can kind of go from a thin to a thick to a thin line and have these really expressive lines, or have lines that kind of taper off in different ways. They're also just fun that you have the ability as you're drawing, you can then go and then do different things with the different line widths without having to change pens. And this is then the soft, which is a lot more flexible, and so it becomes a little bit more challenging to, in my humble opinion, control, but it can be fun in itself. These do take a little bit of practice to use well, but they are a good fun pen. And I do believe that these pens are also waterproof, should you care, but we'll see if that happens. So they're relatively waterproof. Those probably hadn't completely dried when I had that. So that is the Tombow. I call them the Fude nib pens. Note that Faber-Castell has a similar pen out that has their indie ink in it. It's also a really good pen. I just started using these first, and I seem to come back to them for some reason. So that's what I did the black with. So Colorverse and the yellow and orange are both FW inks. So day 10 is nomadic, and I was kind of going for something a little bit more stylized. Not exactly sure how I got this image in my head. I did look up some images online, and that just brings up another thing. If you're doing one of these challenges, or you're fairly new to doing art, you don't have to come out all these ideas completely out of your head. I like to come up with an idea and then find source material to kind of support the idea. So, I found some camels in the sky, and then I think the sand dunes were actually another image. And I'll look them up on the internet, or I'll use images that I can remember that I took, and I'll find sometimes, and then compose the image. But using source material is a really important thing. And there's a lot of different ways to get the source onto your thing. I typically am trying to push myself to draw it visually because I think it's good for me, but sometimes that can be kind of hard, and some things could be a little complicated or whatnot. So there's different ways. You can print it out and then use a light table to have it go through and then trace it. You can use something like this, which is a little video projector that you can put it over it and then project an image. There's also using carbon paper to transfer an image onto your final surface so that you can do final artwork. All that is fair game. Tons of artists do that. You don't have to feel guilty about that, but definitely don't feel guilty about finding source material. You don't have to remember what a camel actually looks like in your head. And most likely, you'd be better than me if you could just bust out a camel without looking at one. So this is kind of a funny story. This is day 11 at Snack. My wife and I were at Niagara Falls on the Canadian side, and we got there, we were kind of hungry, and so we went into a coffee shop, and Debbie had been wanting a croissant from French Canada, and so she got her a croissant, and we were walking out of the coffee shop, and she was holding it up, and the seagull came barreling through, tucked its wings, grabbed it, flew out, landed with it, and it was gone in about 30 seconds. So that is the story of that. And this is, again, the Platinum Preppy with the brush pen. Something I'm doing a lot. You can see some of my line work, which brings up another subject. So I often will do an initial drawing, or at least an outline in pencil, to get just where my proportions and what I'm doing. That's also totally fair game. Even the Inktober rules say you can do that, but there are artists that will say, jump right into the pen and ink and just do that, and you'll become a stronger artist doing that. And I agree with that. I'm just not quite there. And that brings up another point that I sometimes will even outline my pictures before in another sketchbook. So this is my working sketchbook, and these are a few of the drawings you'll see. These were the first handful of drawings that I had here in the book. And so I just kind of got my thinking lined out with it here first, so that as I got into this, then I would have my thought process out. So that's fair game too, although that extends the time a little bit. If you're trying to do 31 drawings in 31 days, you may not want to do that. So that is day 11 snack. And then we get into even crazy more detail. This is kind of the stuff I like to do, and I'm not sorry that I went there, because this is really the kind of drawing I tend to like. This is day 11 remote, and this is actually taken from a photograph on a backpacking trip. I went with a friend, Jeff, and that's my tent. He had his tent there, but I deleted it because I just wanted, wanted to simplify the drawing a little bit. But when I'm doing this, again, I'm learning. I do a fair amount of pen and ink, but I'm still feel like I'm in the middle of the learning process, you know, trying to figure out contrast and how to deal with darks kind of colliding in areas like that. You typically have to create some kind of halo to allow that to happen. Trying to make your foreground detail and your background detail separate out so you have depth. I left the sky this one blank just because I didn't have the time to kind of deal with it. Skies and pen and ink are always a little bit of a time-consuming challenge for me. But anyway, this is up in the Ansel Adams Wilderness area in the Sierra Nevadas, and this is one I'm fairly happy with. Although I might have been able to get a little bit more contrast with it. I didn't do much cross-hatching, which I've done in other drawings, and I'm kind of looking back at it, I probably should have added some cross-hatching to get a little bit of depth to it. So this is day 14. It is Rome, and this is a little RV that we bought recently, and us driving through Nevada. And I tried to create kind of a stylized look, and I did this one completely with the brush pen, the Pentel Pocket brush pen, and which is, again, something that challenges me. Using that as the only drawing thing and controlling it in fine areas and creating detail is something I'm still kind of working at. But it is a fun challenge. I like it. I like the contrast it gets. The blacks are really good. And then I kind of used it as a brush and took the opportunity to really work on kind of stylizing mountains in a foreground. And that's kind of simplification, and stylizing is something that I'm not terribly good at, so I like to challenge myself by trying it sometimes. And somehow I feel like my work will fall somewhere between, you know, this kind of work and that kind of work. Okay, we're back to the lammies, and as you kind of see on this piece of paper that I hit the lammy with water, it'll break out, and the different colors that make that black will kind of break and separate out. And I call that spectralization. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but that's what I call it. Anyway, it's kind of a fun thing. And so you can take advantage of that. So I draw the initial image with the lammy, with the lammy ink, which I have that right here. So this is what the black lammy ink looks like. It fits into those lammy fountain pens. If you're not using a converter, you just throw it in. It is super not water soluble. I mean, some inks, you know, you can move them a little bit with water. These just want to flow, so it almost makes painting it's almost like watercolor in the way that it will flow across the page and do some really fun stuff. So this was the Lamy All-Star. It was this pen here with the Lamy non-waterproof ink, and then I used the Derwent water brush that I was using earlier. This water brush is kind of one of my favorites. There's quite a few companies that make these water brushes, including Pentel and Royal Brush and Caran d'Ache and several others. I like the Derwent because instead of squeezing a handle to get the water to eject, they have this little button. Feels like I have a little bit more control. The other thing I like about the Derwent is that they have one of the biggest flats out there of all the different water brushes that I've kind of dealt with, and I kind of like that. There's 4 different sizes of this brush. So anyway, I use the water brush in order to move that Lamy ink to create this one. So that was 13 Horizon is the prompt for this. So 15, whoop, I got a wrong number. So that says 14, 11, 14, 13, 15. All the numbers are accounted for. I bet I got the numbers wrong. I think the order is correct. The numbering system is a failure. It's a challenge. Anyway, okay, so this is 15th guidebook, and it happened that when I was doing this, I was teaching myself how to bookbind, and so I had all this stuff out on the table, and I was using an electronic guidebook, a guide, to teach me how to do this, and so that is a guidebook. And I was doing some sketchbooks that I gave a lot of them away, putting a Copic stitch onto it. And so I've been wanting to learn to do that for a long time, and I'm trying to grow that a bit. But anyway, guidebook using the Platinum Prep Bee, which is the big one. I use that a lot. So this is another fan art. Probably recognize that if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. It's Gollum. And this is another one that I was pretty happy with my use of cross-hatching and creating contrast. And I think that's one of the challenges with pen and ink, especially fine line kind of pen and ink, is getting the contrast. And so that's what I was really concentrating on here. Contrast creates depth and pulling the subject off the background, yet getting enough complexity that the image is interesting. So this is one I'm pretty happy with, and this is actually using another pen. A friend, artist, kind of recommended a pen that he found that he likes a lot, and that's this Eddington 1880, and they call them a draw liner. I bought a 4-pack. I don't know if they have other sizes. There's some fairly decent variation in the 4 tips. The one thing to note about these technical fine liners, whether it's the Sakura or the Pentel point liners, is they're a pretty sterile, consistent line. Doesn't matter how hard you press down on it, the line, I guess you can lighten it up and get a thinner line, but there's not a lot of line variation to them. And that's their superpower, is that consistency. They are a disposable pen, kind of like the Micron, but I was overall pretty impressed with the pens. They're a nice thing. There are a lot of fine liners out there these days. Again, I'll show you the Sakura and the Pentel and the Eddington. So lots of options. So that is day number 16, and that's Scrungy with my fan art of Gollum and the Eddington 1880 draw liners. And again, as you're kind of noticing, the themes kind of get me crossing over myself a bit, yeah, it was fine. It got me doing some things that I tend to like to do, which I like the landscape and mountain stuff. So day 17 is journal. And this one I did, and I'm not 100% happy with it. I think I needed to get more contrast in it again. And I think my secret is in the cross-hatching that I did in this one. I just didn't translate that across. And so I did a little bit here, but I think I needed to do more cross-hatching, creating more depth. And again, getting a foreground and background that separate out, and that probably would have been a line width thing. So anyway, I learned some things from this. And this was, again, also drawn with the Eddington draw liners. So this is day 18, it's drive, and as I said before, I kind of try to find something that is the prompt, but maybe just not quite the first thing that comes to mind. So, and this is another place where in all these drawings I did some kind of source, and I found a couple of these guys and used that, and I found this guy somewhere else, and I'm still working on my people, but it looks like a cowboy, but maybe not the best person. So this is going back to the Platinum Preppy. Then we get into day 19, and it's ridge. And you can see me crossing over myself. This ridge is actually the Pacific Crest Trail in the Sierras in California, kind of near Lake Tahoe. That would be Lake Tahoe back in here, if you know that area. And this is kind of heading out toward Tinker's Knob, which is south of Highway 80. And I've hiked that hike different directions at different times, and I had this photograph that I used as a reference for it. So, and this is a new pen. This one was done with the Pigma Microns, and the Pigma Micron is another fine liner. They're probably the most popular out of all the fine liners out there. It's by Sakura, and they have probably the most variation in size and then color. And a good art supply store will have a rack of these, and they'll have all the black ones on the top, and then have these in a lot of different colors and different sizes. You can also buy sets of these. A future drawing here, I ended up buying a grayscale set of these, and I really did enjoy those. I kind of moved away from the microns to the point liners, because a good artist friend of mine was kind of saying he liked the point liners better, for they tend to last a little bit longer, and the tips were a little bit more durable. I can't honestly back that yet, although I do like the point liners, but the microns have been a go-to pen for me for a long time, and I know they are for a lot of different artists. So anyway, this was done with the microns. This was another one of my off-kilter kind of ideas. This is day 20, Uncharted, and I just kind of imagined a captain telling a navigator that they're going into uncharted waters, and this was a map that's Florida, and I think that's Cuba. And I've always kind of enjoyed the Pirates of the Caribbean theme and idea. And anyway, that's my thing on that. And this is going back to my Platinum Preppy that I've drawn so much with, that I like a lot. And this is another one where I went back to the Platinum Preppy and then combined it with the pocket brush pen that I've used so often in this, and it's a combination I like a lot. This is day 21, it's rhinoceros. And again, I got source material from different things. I think I drew the trees myself, but I found a rhinoceros, and then I found a picture of an inside of a Range Rover, and used those. And I've been drawing them visually. I didn't get those images on here in any way, but as I said, if that works for you, find ways to get a starting point. I just find that sometimes those crutches can kind of hold you back over time. Use them when they work for you, but don't make them to be permanent crutches. You'll find that your ability to draw a lot of things just visually are good. And if you're really good, I know people that can draw things out of their imagination, but I'm definitely not there. Sometimes I am. Okay, this is another drawing. So this is day 22, and it's camp. And I use the Pentel pocket brush pen for the black area, but I used FW inks for the color. And this, again, is an acrylic-based ink, and it can be applied with brush or dip pen or airbrush, all different kinds of things. You can use these in a large variety of ways, but they do not go into fountain pens, so don't use them for that. I got these hard edges by taping these off and then doing my painting and drawing and then removing the tape. So you can use masking tape or artist tape or washi tape to do that. It gives a really nice look. So before I remove the tape on this, the stars were actually applied with FW acrylic ink, white, but I used a toothbrush. So you never throw away an old toothbrush. They come in handy. You can dip them in the paint, and then I masked off the mountains, and I splattered paint, and that becomes the stars. So that's day 22 camp. Okay, so this is day 23 rust, and again, I'm going back to this guy here, kind of. And this is kind of stretching it. The bars were supposedly rust. That was my take on that. I don't quite remember how I got to that point, except maybe I was trying to match up that. But this is a new grouping of pens. So this is primarily using the Sakura microns, but I recently bought a set based on another YouTuber, and a set of grayscale pens, and it's these pens here, and combine them with the black Sakura microns, and then also my trusty pocket brush pen, and created this image here. And I really like this set. They're definitely a lot of fun. I like to work in monochrome, as I just did a video on that. You can find that. And these really created a really nice ability to make a lot of variation in monochrome. So the pens there's a dark black and a light black in the series, and you get an 01, an 05, a 10, and a brush pen in light and dark black. And I'll show you those here. 01, 05, and then this is a 10, and then a brush, and then I'll show you the brush in the light so you get a comparison of the different values that you can get from these. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this grayscale set of pens. Like it a lot, and I used it twice in this challenge. So it's this one, and then the day 24, which was Expedition. And I used me and my wife and a couple friends rafted the Grand Canyon several years back, and so I took a picture that I had taken down there, and then I added some boats as the first expedition through the Grand Canyon by a white dude was, I think, John Wesley Powell. If I'm wrong, I'll put it down here, but I think it's John Wesley Powell, and he did it in like wood boats, which seemed kind of insane after we did it in these rubber rafts. But yeah. So anyway, that's that. And again, as a critique, I feel like I may have been able to get more density in the foreground of this and create even more depth to the image. But I'm still really happy, and I really like those pens, so I'm kind of glad I did it. Also, wasn't terribly happy with the sky on this one. But overall, I think it was a good first or second attempt with these pens, and I do like them a lot. So that's 24 Expedition. 25 is Scarecrow. And again, I kind of went around the internet looking for some source material with crows and the Scarecrow. Ended up with this, and this is back to my trusty Platinum Preppy. I do like that pen a lot, and you can create some great contrast. I think the blacks from the Preppy are a really nice black. I do think that the Noodler's Bulletproof Black is kind of a nicer black for different applications. Day 26 camera. And so any of you that follow me or my friends will know that I did photography for a really long time. That was my art, and really into cameras. And I kind of remember this picture of Hasselblad made a special camera for NASA for the Apollo missions, and so I hunted down this picture and I ended up drawing it. This is a combination of the, again, most common combination here, the Platinum Preppy and then the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen. This is that gray I was kind of telling you about, the gray in the Pocket Brush Pen, which I still kind of find a little dark and hard to control, but it's that gray. It works okay, but I wish it was just a little lighter. I do have a solution for that in the coming drawing. So this drawing here is the Platinum Preppy straight up, and to some degree, this was what I was trying to be able to achieve. This drawing took longer than it should have for this kind of challenge, but I really wanted to draw it. I love the Northern California redwoods, and this is kind of a stylized version of a road that's in the Humboldt State Park, and it goes through the redwoods. It's really quite spectacular. And so I was trying to render that, and although it is not, I wouldn't consider it a complete success. I think I needed more contrast and some depth. I do like kind of the way I was treating shadows and the contrast that I got. And so there's a lot of things I like about this. And to some degree, I'm really glad I got to this point in this challenge, because it kind of felt like that was what I was striving for, is the kind of work that I've seen the masters do. Not that it's at that level, but it's going that way. Platinum Preppy. This is 27. The prompt is road. Day 28, which again, note that this took me 3 months. So I should say prompt 28, because this was definitely not done on the 28th day. Okay, so this is again my Platinum Preppies. I do believe, I didn't write it down here, but I do believe that it is, I did use the pocket brush pen for some aspects of this, but this background is something that I showed in my monochrome video, which is the last one, which is a thing that I do is you take a Derwent or any of the brush pens like this, and instead of putting water in the handle, you put ink in it, but you don't just put full strength ink in it, you dilute it out quite a ways. And so this is India ink diluted way out, so it creates a really nice gray that you can use to create backgrounds or shadow work. So if you have something, you know, a drawing and you want to create a nice shadow, so I can take a pen like this and draw one of my little classic trees that I use. I can have that, and then I can come in here with this pen and apply this and create a really nice shadow fairly easily. And it's kind of it's fun for doing that. But you can actually apply it in pen and ink and various other things to create a shadow effect. If you let it dry and then layer it and let it dry and layer it and let it dry and layer it, you will build it up over time, and it will get darker. So this is a nice little trick that you can do, as using a brush pen, putting a diluted ink in it. And so day 28 is jumbo, and again, I kind of envisioned a jumbo jet, but I wanted it to be something slightly different, with the kid flying the jumbo jet. Prompt 29, navigator. This one is a combination of different things. I again used the FW ink. I used the Platinum Preppy to do initial line work, and then I believe that there is FW inks in the blacks too. So that's FW ink and that's FW ink, and then I think I diluted it out for this. And then you see it there too. This is again playing off of an earlier theme, but a different character. Navigator. For the stars, I used, and some of these little highlights you see around, I used jelly rollers, white. And this is an interesting thing. There's a lot of different options for creating white in an image, but and I have a lot of different options that I use from time to time. I've used this Uniball white, and then I've used Posca marker, which is a paint marker in white. But the funny thing is, and then I've used FW with a brush, or sometimes you can put it into a pen, and you can create a lot of different whites, but each one of these works better in different situations. And so you have to do some testing. Sometimes the roller balls just don't act opaque and you just can't get a good white. And sometimes the Uniball works and then doesn't work in other places. And the same with the Posca marker is kind of an interesting thing. I think the most consistent white that I've ever used is white gouache, and that generally stands off of most things, although it's not an ink, and so I didn't use it in this. In this, I use these jelly rollers white, and so I generally have a few different white options to make sure. Sometimes if you put down a black, or you have a certain kind of black paper, or you're using it with black or dark watercolor, you just have to find the one that it works with it. I've yet to find a one solution. Again, with the exception of white gouache, does a pretty good job. And gouache is a opaque watercolor. If you generally go to your watercolor section in an art supply store, you'll probably find gouache somewhere around there. And just getting a tube of white and a nice fine brush, you can do some of those fine things like adding little white highlights and stuff. But this one was a white jelly roller. And this is another showing this paper. This had a lot of water and ink on it, and you can see it did warp a little bit, but it stays pretty good. So prompt 30 is violin, and I just ended up taking a photograph. I photographed a violin for someone a while back, and I had a pretty nice photograph of one, and I drew from that. And this is a Pentel brush pen for the background. Then I also used a brush pen with ink, which is what I just showed you, ink in the handle, and that's this gray here, and then that. And then I actually didn't put it on here, but I used a jelly roller for the whites, which didn't work as well as it did the previous one. And then I used my Platinum Preppy for some line work. Day 30 violin. And then we're at the last day, 31. This is it. On my trip that I just did, I went to Mount Rushmore. And it was kind of funny because I felt like I'd seen this in so many pictures and so forth. I wasn't terribly inspired to want to actually stop there, but I'm really glad I did. We walked around the park and went to some of the interpretive sites, and it was actually quite interesting. And it is overwhelming to look up at these things and how large they are and just how much detail that you can see on them. So my last day, day 31, was landmark, was the prompt, and I chose Mount Rushmore. And I think with all the things going on in America right now, we need to remember that these four guys are pretty amazing, did some amazing things, and we have a pretty amazing country. And this was done with a Platinum Preppy and my brush pen. This is pretty much what I had done for the majority of it. That is that diluted ink in that brush pen. So that is Inktober 2024. So again, this challenge, Inktober, is a hard challenge. And if you do it in the 31 days, then it is a big commitment and it is hard. I do advise, if you're going to take this on, is make it work for you. You don't want it to dominate and destroy your life. You want to have fun and do things and feel like you can get through this. This was my first time completing it. I kind of have some ambition to go back to my older ones and complete those at some time, but it'll probably be Inktober 2025 before then, and I'll be probably just going on to that one or another art challenge of some kind. But overall, I still kind of hold from my previous years this year. I set out some goals. I think it's a great opportunity to work on some technique, try out new tools, new techniques, and work on some things that you may not be as good as you wish you were. And after 31 drawings, you're going to see some obvious improvement. And I still think it's a good benefit thing. And I do recommend you try out an art challenge of some kind. If it's not Inktober, there's hundreds of them out there. If you just Google art challenges or talk to people, people will turn you on to different art challenges. It is fun to do it with people that you know. One of the aspects of Inktober is you post to Instagram, and you can go to my Instagram, which is mark.hammond.art, and you can see all these drawings there if you want to see more of them. And so you'll get some interaction on those because other people are doing them. If you're doing it at the time, 31 drawings in 31 days, which I fell behind, you're actually posting the same drawings everybody else is doing. And so you end up getting a little bit more of that interaction. Inktober is great. Highly recommend it. Did you do Inktober this year, or have you done Inktober in the past? let us know in the show notes below. And if you have any other art challenges that you would recommend for other people, tell us that in the show notes also. While you're down there, if you can think about giving us a like and subscribe, they're free to you and they help us out a tremendous amount. So consider doing that. Now, go make some art.